This video was made in collaboration with NARUTOPEDIA. For more information, check out the link in the description. The life of Hashirama Senju. Hashirama Senju was a member of the famed Senju clan. He himself was hailed as the god of Shinobi for his unmatched ninja prowess. Hashirama sought peace for the Shinobi world, and to that end founded Konohagakure with his clan, his childhood friend and rival, Madara Uchiha and the Uchiha clan. He would later become the First Hokage of Konohagakure. Although he wasn't able to achieve peace during his lifetime, his legacy and vision of the world would continue to shape the village and the entire Shinobi world even after his death. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Hashirama Senju. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Background: Hashirama was born during the Warring States period, the eldest of Butsuma Senju's 4 sons. Hashirama and his brothers grew up on the battlefield, waging constant war with the Senju's rivals, the Uchiha. During his infrequent downtime, Hashirama met a boy his own age named Madara. The two quickly developed a friendly rivalry, be it skipping stones or urinating in rivers, with Hashirama typically winning their contests. Hashirama didn't approve of this practice of sending children to fight and die, believing it would only increase the bitterness between the Senju and Uchiha, thus causing more deaths. After the deaths of their brother Kawarama and later Itama, Hashirama and his remaining brother Tobirama decided a new shinobi system would need to be implemented to end the cycle of child deaths, a system that would require an alliance between the Senju and Uchiha. Like Hashirama, Madara was also a shinobi who had lost brothers on the battlefield. Together, they imagined a world where children like themselves wouldn't need to fight and where their brothers would be safe from harm. As a precaution, Hashirama and Madara didn't divulge their family names, but nevertheless discovered each other's identities. Hashirama was a Senju, Madara was an Uchiha. It was their duty to kill each other. Hashirama set his duty aside, unwilling to take his friend's life. Madara, however, decided their dreams of a peaceful world were impossible, and therefore ended their friendship so that they could kill each other without reservation. Over the following years, Hashirama and Madara continued to meet in combat. Hashirama could never bring himself to kill someone he still considered a friend, and Madara could never defeat Hashirama's superior abilities. In time, both Madara and Hashirama became leaders of their respective clans. Under Hashirama's leadership and extraordinary ninja prowess, the Senju began to best the Uchiha clan until at one point, Hashirama had both Madara and Izuna at his mercy. However, unable to find the resolve to kill his childhood friend, Hashirama tried to convince Madara to unite their two clans to make their childhood dreams a reality. A mortally wounded Izuna convinced Madara otherwise, and they retreated, prompting Hashirama to send a ceasefire request. Although some Uchiha found the offer increasingly tempting, Madara was unwilling to accept after Tobirama killed his last remaining brother, Izuna. This did not stop some Uchiha from defecting to the Senju out of self-preservation. Racked with grief, Madara made one final stand against Hashirama and the Senju, and was summarily defeated. Tobirama attempted to kill Madara to finally end the fighting, but Hashirama stopped him, knowing that would only renew hostilities between the Senju and Uchiha. At Madara's suggestion, Hashirama offered to kill himself in order to achieve a peaceful resolution. As he was about to end his own life, Madara stopped him, moved by the gesture, and assented to peace. The Senju, the Uchiha, and all their affiliated clans came together to found a village of peace, where children would never need to die in battle. Hashirama and Madara, rekindling their childhood friendship, called the village Konohagakure. The other countries would soon follow Konohagakure's example and build their own hidden villages. Although Hashirama created much of the village's infrastructure with his wood release abilities, it was his wish that Madara become Hokage, the village's leader and protector. At Tobirama's insistence, the Hokage position was opened up to a vote by Konoha's villagers, and it was Hashirama that they elected into office. Hashirama wanted Madara to become his advisor so that he could improve his standing among the villagers and someday succeed him as second Hokage. Madara felt that that position would inevitably go to Tobirama, which would in turn end badly for the Uchiha. With his position in Konoha rapidly diminishing, Madara decided the village was a failed experiment and abandoned it, intent on someday returning to face Hashirama in battle yet again. True to his promise, Madara eventually attacked Konohagakure on multiple occasions. After countless fights and with the Nine Tails under his control, Madara challenged Hashirama to one final contest. The Nine Tails' power, as well as Hashirama's efforts to capture and contain it, devastated the landscape, carving out what would later be called the Valley of the End. Hashirama spent the duration of their battle trying to reason with Madara, but Madara continued fighting until he was too tired to keep even his Sharingan active. This enabled Hashirama to distract him with Wood Clone while the real Hashirama stabbed him in the back. Madara collapsed, and before dying, noted how much Hashirama had changed from when they were children. In the aftermath of the battle, Tobirama hid away Madara's body, and Hashirama's wife Mito sealed the Nine Tails within herself in order to contain its great power to Konoha's benefit. For a time, things were peaceful. Hashirama helped train one of Tobirama's students, Hiruzen Sarutobi. He got to spoil his first grandchild, Tsunade. He locked away the scrolls of seals, the kinjutsu it contained no longer necessary in the world he'd made. But the peace Hashirama worked so hard for started to unravel. At some point, Takigakure sent Kakuzu to assassinate him. Although he defeated Kakuzu, other wars began to break out, and it was during the First Shinobi World War that Hashirama, eager to form a lasting peace with the other villages, convened a Kage summit so that he could share the tailed beasts Konoha had acquired with them, thus balancing power amongst them. But cooperation would not be so simple as Hashirama intended it to be. First by Tobirama's demand that other villages pay for the tailed beasts they've received, then by the first Kazekage's counter-request of money and territory in lieu of a tailed beast. As unrest began to grow, Hashirama shared his fear that any agreement they made would only be temporary, but also that future generations could forge a lasting unity. Ultimately, Hashirama's wish for peace would not come to fruition during his lifetime, and he died while Konohagakure began to flourish. Before his death, he passed the title of Hokage to Tobirama, and instructed him not to mistreat the Uchiha. Konoha Crush. Orochimaru invades Konoha so that he can kill his master, Hiruzen Sarutobi, who is now the third Hokage. Because Orochimaru wants Hiruzen to experience the same thrills of fighting a teacher as he is, he reincarnates Hashirama and Tobirama. Recognizing Hiruzen and seeing how old he's gotten, Hashirama realizes how long he's been dead. Tobirama, meanwhile, realizes they've been brought back with the Impure World reincarnation, and therefore will have no choice but to fight Hiruzen. Orochimaru suppresses their personalities and forces them to attack. Hiruzen struggles to land an attack against Hashirama and Tobirama, their coordination and responsiveness offering him few openings. The few attacks he does land are merely regenerated by their reincarnated bodies. Because killing Orochimaru will not end the Impure World reincarnation, Hiruzen uses the only option he has left. After creating 2 shadow clones, he has a clone capture each of the deceased Hokage and use the dead demon consuming seal on them. With their personalities restored, Hashirama and Tobirama apologize for being such troubles to him, just as Hiruzen apologizes for the fate he has sentenced them to. He pulls the souls from their reincarnated bodies, feeding them to the Shinigami. Fourth Shinobi World War Climax. At the request of Sasuke Uchiha, Orochimaru releases the souls of the first 4 Hokage from the stomach of the Shinigami so that he can reincarnate them. After taking in their surroundings, Hashirama and Tobirama are excited to meet Minato, the 4th, and take him as a sign of Konoha's continued prosperity. Hashirama asks who the 5th is, and is informed that it's his granddaughter Tsunade. Hashirama accordingly worries about the village's current fate. Sasuke asks the former Hokage about the history of the village, specifically with regards to the Uchiha clan. From Tobirama's comments, Hashirama realizes that Tobirama didn't follow his instructions to be understanding of the Uchiha, which greatly angered him. When Tobirama prepares to attack Sasuke in order to protect the village from one of the last Uchiha, Hashirama uses force to stay his hand. The Hokage are told about recent events, namely the outbreak of the 4th Shinobi World War and the reincarnation of Madara Uchiha. Tobirama wishes to go and help Konoha's forces in the war effort and asks for Hashirama's help. Although Orochimaru has perfected his control of the Impure World reincarnation, Hashirama is still strong enough to break free if he chooses. Instead of doing that, however, he decides to tell Sasuke about his work to create Konoha and the dealings of the Uchiha, as that is why he has been reincarnated in the first place. Hearing Hashirama's history and reflecting on his own experiences, Sasuke decides he doesn't want Konoha to be destroyed, as is Madara's current intention. Orochimaru releases the Hokage from his control so that they can help in this goal, and they set out for the site of the allied shinobi forces' battle with the Ten Tails. Although worried by Madara's current plans, Hashirama is at the same time curious how Madara managed to survive their last encounter and looks forward to seeing him. When they arrive on the battlefield, Madara, sensing Hashirama, excitedly asks for a chance to fight him. but Hashirama replies that he'll need to wait. Entering Sage mode, Hashirama uses Sage Art, Gate of the Great God, to bind the Ten Tails, then assists the other Hokage in erecting a barrier to confine it. Because he must stay with the barrier, Hashirama creates 5 wood clones to act on his behalf. 4 lead an attack against the Ten Tails minions, while the 5th engages Madara. Madara is uninterested and offers to continue waiting until the real Hashirama is available. When Obito Uchiha arrives on the battlefield, Hashirama realizes that Madara is forcing him to use the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique to revive him. He creates 6 additional wood clones to go after Madara and stop him. Obito is able to resist Madara's control and instead seals the Ten Tails into himself, becoming its Jinchūriki. Birth of the Ten Tails Jinchūriki. With his new power, Obito rips down the barrier, easily shrugs off another Gate of the Great God, and tears through one of the wood clones before it has a chance to respond. The clone is able to retain its form for long enough to create branches that restrain Obito, allowing one of Tobirama's shadow clones to use mutually multiplying explosive tags. When this fails to have any effect, Hashirama decides to get personally involved. Madara, however, is done waiting, and forces Hashirama to fight him. Hashirama tries to convince him to postpone, but Madara won't hear any of it. While he engages Madara, his remaining wood clones provide what support to the allies they can, and keep Hashirama apprised of how the battle against Obito is going. After Obito creates the Ten Tails giant tree form, Madara explains to Hashirama the tree's function in the eventual implementation of the infinite Tsukiyomi. Needing to communicate this to the rest of the alliance, Hashirama has Ino Yamanaka telepathically link one of his wood clones to the rest of the alliance, which now includes Tsunade and the other current Kage. After saying hello to his granddaughter, the clone relays his message and implores them not to give. When feelings of futility begin to grow amongst the alliance's ranks, Hashirama shares his memories of the first Kage summit with them, helping to rally them all and ultimately defeat Obito. The original Hashirama, meanwhile, manages to pin Madara with multiple Gate of the Great Gods and surrounds him with wood dragons to prevent him from escaping. Naruto Uzumaki arrives to help seal Madara, thus ending the war, but Madara implements a final trump card before they can do so, successfully forcing Obito to restore him to life with the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique. The full return of his original power allows Madara to break free of his restraints and, in the confusion, quickly immobilize Hashirama with chakra receivers. Madara is able to fight off several other immediate attackers, but his revival has left him without his eyes, diminishing his senses. He approaches Hashirama and absorbs his Senjutsu chakra so that he can find targets based on their chakra signatures. Before he leaves, Madara notes that the plan for peace he mentioned to Hashirama so long ago is about to be achieved. As Sasuke is about to go after Madara, Hashirama, still unable to move, offers to give him a jutsu that can be used to cancel out the Senjutsu chakra Madara has taken. Sasuke asks why Hashirama would trust him, an Uchiha, to which Hashirama replies that he resembles Madara's brother Izuna, and that maybe that likeness will remind Madara of the kind person he used to be before Izuna died. In the end, Sasuke fails, and the infinite Tsukiyomi is cast, with the whole world, the reincarnated Hokage excluded, getting wrapped into God, nativity of a world of trees. Kaguya Ōtsutsuki strikes. Sometime later, the chakra receivers disappear, restoring Hashirama's mobility. He reunites with the other Hokage, and they try to figure out what they can do to break the infinite Tsukiyomi. They are met by the spirit of the Sage of the Six Paths, who recruits their help. Combining efforts with the spirit of the other dead Kage, they summon Team 7, Madara, and the tailed beasts back from Kaguya's dimension. Hashirama approaches Madara, who is too weak to get up and is in fact dying from his ordeal. Madara uses his remaining moments of life to admit that Hashirama's method of peace was right all along. Hashirama forgives him and says that they are still friends despite everything, which Madara uses his last breath to say isn't so bad. Hashirama and the other Kage are returned to the Pure Land by the Sage of Six Paths. As his soul ascends, Hashirama wishes Sasuke and Naruto luck, hoping that they have a better experience together than he and Madara did. Legacy. The fact that only Hashirama possessed the ability to use wood release and related abilities of controlling tailed beasts and self-regeneration made his DNA highly coveted after his death. In the anime, Konoha sanctioned several attempts to research and reproduce Hashirama's power, but all met with disastrous failure and further study was forbidden. Orochimaru exhumed Hashirama's body for his own experiments, where he infused 60 child test subjects with cells harvested from the remains in the hopes that one would prove able to use wood release. Only Yamato survives the process. Danzo Shimura had a work relationship with Orochimaru and had his right arm infused with Hashirama's cells. In addition to granting him increased chakra levels and limited wood release abilities, it extended the amount of time he could keep Izanagi active with his different Sharingan and increased how often he could use Koto Amatsukami. Kabuto Yakushi continued Orochimaru's studies, eventually learning how to create an implant that would grant whoever received it access to Hashirama's power. The only recipient of this implant was Madara, enhancing him beyond his prime. Madara Uchiha took his own sample of Hashirama's DNA during their fight at the Valley of the End, which he applied to his injuries afterwards to accelerate his recovery. Decades later, towards the end of his natural lifespan, the mixing of Hashirama's DNA with his own would evolve his Sharingan into Rinnegan. Using this DNA sample, Madara created a mindless clone of Hashirama, with which he was able to produce a substance that could heal injuries and replace lost limbs. Tsunade later does the same. This same substance would be used in the manufacture of the White Zetsu army. In the anime, Root saw this as a means to create an ultimate weapon, researching for years to create Gozu Tenno. In the anime, Hashirama's DNA became so highly coveted that samples were acquired and sold on the black market in the Land of Silence. A large part of Hashirama's legacy was his philosophy of the Will of Fire, which became increasingly common amongst Konoha's ninja in the years after his death. Future Hokage in particular were expected to fully adopt the philosophy. In time, even members of the Uchiha clan began demonstrating signs of the Will of Fire, with Hashirama claiming Itachi Uchiha's dedication to the village was even greater than his own. Personality. Hashirama was an excitable man with a boisterous personality. He loved meeting new people, having friendly competitions, and gambling. Headstrong and often impulsive, it fell to others, such as his brother Tobirama, to be more responsible or realistic about things that Hashirama had gotten carried away with. When taken down in this way, or even when simply presented with information that troubled him, Hashirama could do a near immediate about-face, going from laughing to sulking. These moping periods were typically brief though, and he'd quickly go back to his usual high-spirited nature. Later generations upon meeting him tended to remark that neither extremes of his personality were very fitting for a man called the God of Shinobi. Despite the first impression he may give, Hashirama was capable of being serious when it came to matters that were important to him. He spent years opposing the practice of sending children to war and dreamed of a shinobi system where a child could be around others his or her age, never needing to grow up prematurely on the battlefield. To that end, he became very devoted to Konoha upon its foundation, as it was the realization of his dream for peaceful childhoods. He wanted the rest of the village to cherish what Konoha represented just as much as he did, encouraging them to regard every villager as part of one large family that should always look out for each other. As Hokage, his job was to protect that family at all costs, even if that cost was his life. This philosophy, known as the Will of Fire, would become a cornerstone of Konoha teachings for decades after his death. The Will of Fire is demonstrative of Hashirama's general optimism when it came to other people. He believed a village-first loyalty would naturally break down the mentality that shinobi had to look out for their clans. Hashirama lived by this philosophy long before Konoha's founding, having no qualms about killing himself if it meant peace between the Uchiha and the Senju clans. In fact, his entire goal of gaining more power was to have enough just to stop violence. One example of this was he believed if the two most powerful clans during the Warring States period were to join forces, there would be no other shinobi clan to stand against them and would stop selling their services, effectively ending the Warring States period. He always saw the best in others, either trusting that they acted in good faith or that they could, through non-violent means, be reasoned with. He was humble, not above lowering his head to his fellow village heads or claiming inferiority to those he'd never met, but whose actions he approved of. If nothing else, Hashirama was kind, placing the needs of others before his own. He was even willing to take his own life if it would help create a world where his friends and family wouldn't need to die unnecessarily. It was on these points that Tobirama disagreed with Hashirama most ardently, as Tobirama felt that Hashirama should have a greater value of himself and a greater suspicion of others. It was similarly on these points that Hashirama was at his most forceful, asserting his views over Tobirama's. Though Tobirama did not often agree, he knew better than to oppose his brother. Hashirama is also well balanced on this regard, as he didn't exert his force over Tobirama over past actions that cannot be changed, such as when finding out Tobirama seemingly mistreated the Uchiha. He expressed anger, but didn't exert his force as it didn't do any good. Hashirama had a lifelong friendship and rivalry with Madara Uchiha, eventually considering him a brother. As children, they would spend much of their free time together, talking, playing, and planning for a future that they weren't sure would ever come. Both were willing to oppose their own fathers by refusing to kill each other, but only Hashirama kept up this refusal into adulthood. Even as enemies, Hashirama would go out of his way for Madara, restraining himself and Tobirama so as not to hurt himself and indulging Madara's desires at his own consequence. When they were able to rekindle their friendship by making Konoha, Hashirama placed a great deal of trust in Madara by desiring him to be Hokage, believing it to be the best way for Madara to recover from the loss of his brothers. When this ultimately failed, Hashirama respected Madara's opinions and dissatisfaction with the village, but would not permit him to move against Konoha, killing him in the end with sadness and reluctance in order to protect what they'd made together. Despite everything, Hashirama considered Madara his friend to the very end. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Thank you for watching. Adrian out.